Lordstown Motors attracted a lot of investors with the promise of delivering the very first electric pickup truck on the market. This, combined with the fact that tons and tons of investors are looking into the electric vehicle and transportation space, has really hyped up the company, or at least it did. The Endurance was supposed to come out in 2021, and there was a lot of promise. The company had actually secured a large factory, and it looked like they were accelerating their production schedules. With a bit of support from GM, as well as a very vocal CEO, it looked like they were on the right track. But a lot of that fell apart after there was a huge report from Hindenburg Research. If you're unfamiliar with Hindenburg Research, they are a short-selling firm, which means they do detailed write-ups and investigative journalism on companies they think are lying to investors. They take a large short position in those companies that they don't believe in, and then they release whatever evidence they have to push the stock price down further. As bad as this might sound, it is important to realize that they have a pretty good track record. When we go through the entire list of what they've done, one of the biggest reports they did was with Nikola, where they showed and proved that the Nikola truck that was apparently driving was actually just being pushed down a hill. It was a non-functional prop. And that resulted in the CEO of Nikola resigning, as well as an investigation being opened up by the SEC. And they've pointed out a lot of these disingenuous companies. They had a pretty big report on Lordstown Motors that had a lot of big allegations, one of which was really about how the CEO was manipulating or perhaps arguably lying about orders. One of the things they pointed to was completely non-binding orders being used as numbers for income, meaning companies put zero down for these trucks, and many of these companies were basically non-existent entities. Like the address was an apartment somewhere in Texas with 1 or 2 employees on record, apparently pre-ordering a bunch of trucks. And the CEO was very vocal with how he talked. He would say they have pre-sold over 100,000 vehicles. He showed up on Kramer's Mad Money. He was definitely someone who was really active on social media. They also dug up some evidence of failed Lordstown Endurance prototypes that caught fire, as well as claimed production targets and things like that were being disingenuously transmitted. And the way Hindenburg really wraps up their reports is they provide a list of questions, and they want answers to all of these questions. Really, these are pretty significant, and assuming there was no wrongdoing done, a CEO should ideally be able to answer each and every one of these. But really, there were no good answers for a lot of these questions. And while Lordstown does maintain that Hindenburg's allegations are, in significant respects, false and misleading, as they quote it, they still did not address a lot of the questions. But ultimately, the CEO, the very vocal one, the one you saw on Mad Money, departed, as well as their CFO. So there's been a really big shakeup in the company. And if we look at the company in the past 6 months, we see there has really been a huge decline. Now, this really was a speculative asset since they were not selling a product quite yet, as in they didn't have something in production that they were selling every single day. There was still a huge drop right off a cliff. And fairly recently, when we saw the CEO and CFO resign, we saw another huge drop. However, we did see a pretty green day, up 11%, which isn't much considering all the huge declines that we saw previously, but a lot of this jump was based off the new CEO and what they had to say. The new executives are trying to cite binding orders, ones that actually require money down, and that it has enough orders, binding orders from customers to fund limited production of the electric pickup truck through May 2022. And they say that doing this will require them to put all their resources towards the Endurance pickup truck, which means that other projects, including an electric recreational van, have been put on hold, according to the new CEO and president. Now, personally, if you're not selling your main product, especially the one you've advertised so much, I really don't think there's much space for side projects unless you just have a lot of free engineers who aren't able to do manufacturing work, but they are trying to re-inspire some confidence in the company. And it does look like the CEO and CFO really made some big mistakes when leading the company, hence their departure and a pretty intense pivot from the current management. I want to take a quick moment to say that I deeply appreciate your viewership, and if you really like content from this channel, I would highly appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want constant notifications, just hit the little bell icon that pops up after you click subscribe. Additionally, if you want to get up to $2,300 in free stocks, as well as get started trading in the market, I have a referral link in the description of my video to Webull. If you sign up with that link, you could potentially get up to $2,300 in free stocks, which includes companies like Google, Facebook, and Starbucks. I'll have a bit more about them at the end of this video, so stay tuned. They are still over $1.8 billion for a market cap, and there does seem to be a good amount of support when it comes to the actual stock price, but it's hard to say where the company will go. Whether really big institutions that might have invested in this company are willing to drop a lot of it, how they're reevaluating things, whether they have a holding period on their stock. It's complicated. I actually did a video about Lordstown Motors when they initially started talking about their endurance pickup truck. I went through a lot of the details on the truck. There were a lot of things they were promising, and as I went through, I thought there were quite a few interesting details, a very clean, well laid out website, things like that. And of course, a major claim that they would be the first electric pickup truck on the market in proper mass production. The fact they had a factory I thought was super important because we see so many of these SPAC companies having multi-billion-dollar evaluations when they don't even have a factory to produce a product. And building a factory for mass production of something, especially as complicated as a vehicle, that's no easy feat. That takes years. And the reality is, because each production line requires different tooling and setup, you can't just buy a factory already set up to make vehicles and instantly have it be useful for other vehicles. A vehicle factory is really specialized in a lot of ways. It was pretty disheartening to see that they misled investors. And really the thing I said in that follow-up video where I went into detail on the Hindenburg report, I went through each of the major points, what they brought up, things like that, and how it pertains to the company. I really stated that, in my opinion, they are not going to win back significant amounts of trust unless they actually deliver. Until we start seeing vehicles out the door available for purchase, people are just not going to trust them that much because there's been a lot of deception, a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And despite the nice looking videos they might have produced or whatever, it doesn't change the fact that you can't just treat your investors like this, not address a problem, and then cut off the CEO and CFO and really hope to lick those wounds with new leadership. I'm personally always a little cautious when it comes to things like SPACs or companies not producing product. Naturally, if you want to get in early, if you really believe in a company, you make the most amount of money when few people believe in them. That is really how you make huge profits in the market. You believe something that other people don't, that most other people don't. But ultimately, when you're dealing with smaller companies like this, especially ones trying to jump on the green bandwagon, there's always a major concern about whether or not they're legitimate. And in this case, it does look like they are legitimate, just managed very poorly, and perhaps willing to play a little dirty to try to cover up shortcomings and keep the stock price high. It's a difficult situation, and it's definitely painful for anyone who had invested in Lordstown Motors before, but they are claiming that production plans remain on track, that they're going to begin their limited production of its endurance pickup trucks late this September. And as I mentioned in my previous videos covering the company, one of the reasons I thought it had a lot of potential is because pickup trucks are a massive market. Every time you go through a list covering the top selling vehicles in the United States, number one is always the Ford F-Series, pickup trucks. Number two is always the Chevy Silverado, pickup trucks. And number three is always the Ram, pickup trucks. That's a huge market. That is the most popular vehicle in America, pickup trucks. There's a huge demand for that. And there are definitely a lot of these electric vehicle companies that do target really niche, small, crazy vehicles that we don't see any on the road, right? They're targeting a market with really no backing or evidence to support it. And sometimes you can create something new and get huge adoption on it. But for a small startup to do that, really, when you think about companies creating something the consumer doesn't know they want, probably think about something like Apple when they created the iPhone. That was a very strong mentality of Steve Jobs where he said, the consumer doesn't know what they want, I know what they want. And he was able to produce some pretty popular products that maybe weren't completely groundbreaking in the fact that, like, we never had a touchscreen phone sort of model like that before. But he made it in such a palatable package that the mainstream consumer absolutely loved it. So while I do think there's a lot of potential in the market, I really do question Lordstown's leadership, the way they've acted, the way they've represented things, and the fact they really have not given an impressive response to Hindenburg's questions. Things look rough for them, but again, I don't think they're really going to get a whole lot of mainstream trust back unless they start producing vehicles. If they say that production is on track, well, let's see it. Let's see those vehicles produced. Let's see them getting sold and sent to customers. Let's see those binding orders continue to soar. Time will tell what's going on, but for all you investors out there, be careful in the market, especially when it comes to startup companies. If you're interested in investing in the market with self-directed trading, a fantastic way to start is with Webull. If you sign up now using my referral link in the description of this video, you'll get 2 free stocks valued up to $2,300, which includes companies like Google, Facebook, and Starbucks, as well as many others. All the money in your account is yours to invest, trade, or withdraw as you please. It's your money. There's 0 fees associated with depositing money. You just get your stocks and you'll get your buying power immediately. So if you want a fantastic mobile, desktop, and web trading brokerage, just use the link in the description of this video. Thanks and happy trading.